If you're a business owner feeling stuck, overwhelmed, and ready to grow, you're in the right place. Welcome to Small Business Pivots, where founders share insights, stories, and pivots that lead to sustainable growth. I'm your host, Michael D. Morrison, a business coach helping business owners get unstuck and grow. Welcome to another Small Business Pivots, where we bring guests from around the world to help you who are stuck in your business move the needle and get unstuck. So we have a very special guest today. And if you've listened to the show, you know that no one can introduce themselves or their company like the business owner. So I let you, my friend, introduce you and just a few tidbits of information that you'd like to share with our audience.
Outstanding, Michael. Thanks for having me. Wonderful to be with you. I'm John Ravaris. I'm the founder of a marketing and sales advisory called UVP Solutions, and soon to be a first-time author of a book called Define Value and Drive Growth that is actually on Amazon now for pre-order, but out officially on June 3rd. In our advisory and in the book, we outlay and outline a practical approach for small and medium-sized businesses to define who they are as a business uniquely differently than their competitors. We help them define the value that they create for their clients. And then we help them turn and take all that information and turn them into growth-enabled organizations. So really about who you are and how that's different, why who you are and the strengths that you drive, how those really help clients eliminate the pain that they're feeling and help them be successful. And typically, if you do that, right, the more value you create, the more raving fans you have as customers and the quicker you grow. So that's in a nutshell what we do and how we do it. I'm really excited to walk through it with you because I know you have a passion around marketing and sales and differentiation and growth, and I know your audience does as well. So it should be a fun few minutes we get to spend together.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you spending your time. And as of this recording, the book has not launched. So we're kind of getting some insider information here. So I really looking forward to this. Well, I know our audience likes to know a little bit about our guests, maybe their upbringing, so they can kind of gauge their experience and see if they're relatable to them. So how did you get into the adulting world? Any fun, exciting things growing up?
Hey, interesting. I know you're from Oklahoma, so you'll appreciate. I'm a small town kid from Vermont. Spent most of my life in the northeastern United States, Vermont, New Hampshire. I'm a graduate of the University of Maine, the Black Bears. And through some job changes and career moves, I found myself in the great state of Wisconsin. We've been here almost 18 years now. So although I'm a New Englander by birth and growing up, I'm now a Midwesterner. So I'm a little farther north than you are, but excited for the change of scenery and still with strong roots to the East Coast. I tell people I'm a marketer by education and a salesperson because I had to feed my family. And as it goes, always through my career, I've had a passion for really understanding clients' unique needs. And ironically, it is this kind of integration between marketing and sales that's my real passion. So in my education, understood the value of really understanding what clients are achieving. But I got that chance to see that really firsthand when carrying the sales bag and being able to articulate that well, right? And so I got lucky early in my career. I worked for a small industrial manufacturer in the Northeast, and although we were we didn't sell anything really sexy. We actually sold industrial cleaning products to include things like toilet bowl cleaner and all those things. We were never defined by the industry we were in, nor the products we sold, but we really defined ourselves by knowing clients really well. So as I started as a young salesperson, I was given sales training. I was given a very competent sales toolkit that was focused at understanding what clients were trying to achieve. And I was told where to go and how to deliver the message. So early on in my career, I kind of saw marketing and sales utopia, right? I saw very specific ways to utilize all the tools and training given, that if I went and talked to this particular client and asked them about what they were doing, typically in my sales toolkit, I had the answer. That was the first 10 years of my career. And then for the next 30 years, I didn't have that. So I had to start developing it. And that's where really this passion for this sales and marketing integration, putting together everything that small businesses need to grow. Ironically, around my career, I've always worked for privately held businesses, from small private held businesses, 10, $15 million, all the way to billion-dollar corporations, but all family owned. And everybody says, well, why did you do that? And I always like to tell people, Michael, I knew I was one chromosome short of being an entrepreneur, but I knew I loved everything about being close to the business, being close to the client, and having, that ability to set strategy and to drive direction. So probably more than you wanted on my background, but that's how I got to where I am.
That's a great story. And so I do have a question. Your first sales experience, you had kind of a script, you had the resources, the tools. The second journey, you didn't. As the actual salesperson, was that a good thing, bad thing? Which one did you like best? Because I work with business owners and they just hire a random salesperson to let them go out there and figure it out. And so you came from both sides of the fence. What was that like?
Yeah. Again, great question. And I'm so passionate about this. I tell business owners all the time, until you have a toolkit ready, education available, and direction on how to be successful, I wouldn't waste any time hiring salespeople. And maybe the waste is too strong of a component. But typically what happens, especially in small businesses, right, is the owner or that founder or that leader is looking now for somebody to do what they did. And they sometimes think that if they just bring that person in by osmosis, right, they will understand the uniqueness of the business, the strengths of the organization, and how they deliver products or services. They think that they'll be able to just pick up on what the client pain points and hot buttons are. And doing this a long time, it's much harder than that. So what do? We go out and we hire this, high flyer from the industry, might have worked for a competitor, has some track record of success, and we basically want them to come into our organization and do what they did somewhere else. And ironically, I just wrote an article around in Chief Executive Magazine that talked about, if your sales strategy is a person, you don't have a sales strategy, right? You have a person, a single point of failure is what you have. So back to your question, it's not even kind of a question, right? All good salespeople, if you want to drive sales efficiency and you want to drive sales growth at speed, people need the tools, education, and direction on how to be successful.
I totally agree. I'm like shaking. rooting you on here because
Yeah.
I feel the same way, until you figured it out and you understand the demographics, geographics. I mean, you could have 10 plumbers in the same room. They all serve a different audience, their skill sets, their resources, things like that. So I totally agree with that. So you have guided businesses from tens of millions to hundreds of millions. So let's talk about what the process is, the growth process of how to do that with systems.
Yeah, perfect. Really, three major buckets. The first really major bucket is a discovery process. We really focus heavy on understanding the strengths of our organization, not the strengths of the organization that the owner thinks we have or that the leadership team thinks we have, but strengths of the organization as our employees see it. So it's amazing when we do this work and we go out and we interview 10 or 12 employees and we ask them simple questions. Why do you like working here? What value do you think we bring as an organization? What are our strengths as an organization? I sat down and debriefed owners with of small businesses that the information that we share back brings them to tears. They don't even understand because sometimes, right, you're so close to it, you don't understand how special your organization is, the things that your organization does well that you don't even see it does well because it's what you do. And you think, well, everybody does it that way. So we start the discovery process internally with employees. Then we move externally and interview clients. And that process of interviewing clients really is focusing on what their pain points are and what their success factors are. For our clients who are trying to decide whether to use our services or somebody else's services, we really want to understand what goals they're trying to achieve and how the product or service and the strengths of our organization help them reach those goals. Very, very important to understand that. So if you think about internal strengths established through mining internal information, and you think about external mining of client information, you start getting to see how your strengths line up to deliver value to clients. Here's the piece that people typically leave out of this process is the competitive analysis. Very difficult even if you do the step and you understand your strengths very specifically and you understand what your clients are trying to accomplish, very difficult to articulate that uniquely and differently unless you understand your competitive set and what they're articulating. And the reason being is when you start developing unique value propositions, which we'll talk about next, there's two really important things that you have to communicate to clients. One are like competencies. So all businesses who are in relative same industries do have competencies that look like their competition. A lot of people don't spend a lot of time with those, right? So they'll just say, hey, we're in the cleaning business, they're in the cleaning business, and they throw that out. Well, even if you're in the same business as somebody else or deliver the same services or product as somebody else, you still have to articulate those like competencies differently so they don't seem as though you do something exactly as somebody else. And then obviously they're the unique competencies that only you deliver as a business, whatever that might be, a technology or a process or a way you execute or a money back guarantee. But really the like competencies and the unique competencies come together to articulate that difference. So really number one is the discovery process. Number two is that development process and taking all of that information and articulating it in a way where your clients say, hey, Michael, your organization understands what I'm trying to achieve. I see how your organization, through how it delivers the product and service you sell, helps me achieve my goals. And the better you articulate that, the more value you create, right? So organizational strengths that are focused in delivering client outcomes and expectations that exceed what is expected creates value. The more value you create, the more sticky you are to your existing customers, the more those customers talk to their other friends about what you do, and typically the quicker you grow. And then the last piece is that growth component, and then we can break them back down. But the growth component is once you understand who you are, right? Once you understand what you do well, then back to our original discussion, you have to amplify that through your organization, not just your sales organization, but through all of your customer facing employees, whether that's a service tech, a customer service person, somebody who is, facing clients in the warehouse through a will call process. Everybody has to be articulated and understand what the message is that that is being communicated. And when you do that, then all of a sudden you become a growth enabled organization, not reliant back on that one or two salesperson that we talked about before.
You're listening to Small Business Pivots with Michael D. Morrison. If you're ready to get your business unstuck and grow, let's chat. Schedule your free session at michaeldmorrison.com. Now back to the show.
How difficult is it in the discovery phase when you have a company that's not aligned to get the right answers? Because I've seen where Paul might say this and Lulu says that and Annabelle says that. And how do you find the alignment, the parallels to, because I would think the discovery part is probably the most important, maybe.
Yeah, not maybe. You're right. It is very important. Here's what's interesting, and in the book I talk about 100 billion bottles washed up on the shore. What nobody ever tells you is that single core value word or that single core value definition, or nobody tells you that perfect unique value proposition phrase. But what they do is they tell you tidbits of information, right? Think of each one of those bottles having the message in there and how you put them together. And back to your question, how do you do that? It really is around a summation of themes. So what you're looking for is not the specific answer. You're looking for the themes that lead you to the answer. So, for example, I recently did some work with a client in California, and through the discovery phase, we started talking about the information, and this, the traditional core value word of teamwork came up. And the more we talked about the data, the more we talked about those individual surveys that you just talked about, we pushed back and we said, here's the definition of teamwork. What we have here is something different. And somebody in the leadership team said, you're right. What we're describing is camaraderie, not just teamwork and being part of a team, but camaraderie where we were all invested in each other's success in a way that we're picking the team up and kind of, all boats rise in high tides. It wasn't just about that we were forced to work together in success because we were teammates, but we actually had a deeper level of camaraderie that we went out of our way to be successful. So again, it's a kind of a massaging of the data. It's an analysis of the summary. And quite frankly, in our consulting business, we utilize AI and an AI tool we have to help us do some of those summaries to get us to that answer. But again, it's important to go through the activity to hear the individual messages and then work together as a team to put them together.
How damaging do you think it is when a company doesn't have what you're talking about, kind of a fully aligned script? I'm just going to use script if that's probably not the right word. When each person is out there selling their own interpretation of the company, right? So how damaging do you think that is? So business owners can actually see, like, you really need to do this.
Yeah, it's interesting. Typically, when growth stalls, people start asking these questions, or when you enter a new market, right, and you have a new customer base and it's outside of your comfort zone, or a new competitor comes into your marketplace, or you grow yourself into a new competitor, right, and the landscape changes. And when that landscape changes, I liked your word. How damaging is it? It's very damaging, because then you don't have a concise set approach to new situations. So you're leaving really everybody's success up to individual performance. I like to say this. Everybody asks me all the time, probably asks you a lot of times too, right? What's the difference between an A, B, and a C salesperson? And I always say, and this was in my career, an A salesperson can take any value proposition or any good value proposition, 75 to 80% of what's needed, and they'll figure out how to manipulate it, make it better, and be successful selling. A B person will do a little bit of that, but won't be as successful. The C person takes out the exact toolkit you give them, good, bad, or indifferent, and they just keep presenting it and aren't very successful. So think about if you gave that same A, B, and C seller all the same skills, all the same tools, all the same training, all the same support. What happens? The A seller actually sells quicker, better, and faster because they're not in their home office fixing all the stuff that they need to. The B person is more successful because they're actually doing all that they were doing, but their close rate is higher. And then the C person has a chance of success. And if they succeed, great. But if they don't, at least you have a barometer to say, I gave John or I gave Michael every tool and he wasn't able to do it, versus wondering if that person just can't do it because they weren't able to create what they needed to on their own to be successful. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I've learned this firsthand years ago when we didn't have some type of similar resources to give our team. When a person leaves, it leaves the company vulnerable to, well, when Michael was there, he said this, versus when we had a complete system, there was no if, and, or buts. Our entire team said, oh, we would have never said that. We know you're not telling the truth, customer or prospect, because that is not in our DNA. And so that can also help on that side too, kind of get you out of those sticky situations from time to time. The unique value propositions. So once you've accumulated all this data and research and created a system, I know some business owners are probably thinking, so will I have a tagline? Is it something like that? Or what's my differentiator? Can you kind of explain what that looks like so that we're not a commodity anymore and we actually have value to sell?
Yeah. Wonderful point. All of the work that we do is around not creating taglines, so to speak, or industry speak, right? Very hard to differentiate on a tagline alone. What we're trying to do, and as you touched on the importance of that discovery process, is really trying to articulate clearly through cultural differentiation, experience differentiation, knowledge differentiation, how those bubble up into creating unique value and propositions or differentiations for organizations. So it is much more of a articulation of the cultural components of the business and the real strengths of the business, versus relying, so to speak, on the tagline. Obviously, the way you articulate your unique value proposition, as we talked about being different and unique, is really, really important. But I like to think about it as kind of that whole body of work that you bring to the surface versus a piece of material and or a fancy word or an interesting graphical look, right? Especially in today's day and age, the look matters, the words matter, but really what matters the most is how the words and the look come together to speak competently directly to a client and what that client is trying to achieve.
Is it best to, I said the word script earlier, and I'm going to switch it to system, but is it better for a business to have scripts so that they can be prepared in different scenarios, different situations? Or is it better to give them the resources, the analysis, so that they can come to their own conclusion? Like, if you know enough about our company, what we're good at, what we're bad at, you can, if you're a good communicator, you can use this information. Which side does this lean more towards?
So I'm a script guy, right? In all sales training that I do, we work together on a consolidated elevator pitch,
Okay.
right? When we're all out there together and we have 30 seconds to tell somebody what we do and how we do it and why we do it differently, I want the team coming from the same foundation. So to answer your question, I like the script and then let them make it their own versus make it their own. I don't want to ever squelch anybody's creativity or give them language, words that they're not comfortable using. But the roadmap has to be there for them to say, when I got 30 seconds, I got 3 points I want to make, and I want everybody to make them. And here are the 3 points. The words in between the points, we're okay on flexibility there, but the 3 points have to be made across the organization.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's talk about your book. So it will be out soon after this is uploaded. Anything you want to share about the book and who it's for and how it helps them?
Yeah. Really, really proud of the work. And I say that supremely humbly, for the reason there's a Greek proverb I love. You might have heard it. It said, society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit in. Yeah. And the book, Michael, is really a culmination of my 35 plus years of marketing and sales experience, working in small and medium-sized privately held businesses and seeing the struggles that they had really putting together, kind of the marketing function and the sales function to be really, really strong to drive growth long term. I liked your word, systematically drive growth long term, not dependent on the owner, not dependent on a salesperson, not dependent on one large client or two large clients, but systematically build an organization that is structurally sound to grow over the long term, especially in family owned and founder led businesses. We're going to have the greatest transfer of wealth in our country's history coming up over the next decade. And most of that wealth is in family businesses. So if we can help those businesses transfer that knowledge between generations in a way that's meaningful, great. If that's not the case, still build a great business so it's set up better to exit it and still build that living legacy for the business. So the book really is a practical approach. It talks about where to begin and how to end. There's a model we call the 4D roadmap that is ingrained through the book. And the early feedback is it hits home in that practical approach. It hits home from the standpoint that people say, I think there's some real valuable principles in here that we can implement into our business to make what we're doing better, and not tomorrow, but starting today.
Well, and to give our listeners just a little bit of credibility about this book, it was endorsed by Gino Wickman. So the creator of EOS, Traction is what most people know that book as. So that's incredible. Do you work the EOS system? How did you get that endorsement?
So funny. So I learned about EOS back around 2022, and then started my consulting business. And in the time I started my consulting business, I had a friend who was running a small residential construction company, and perfect EOS scenario. Really successful at building a house, went from nothing to, a $20 million business. But from a structural standpoint, out of control, yeah. Right? And so I had found out about EOS. I had told him about EOS, and I helped him kind of think through it. But in getting familiar with the EOS system, what I quickly realized was define value and drive growth is like EOS 2.0, meaning once your business is solidified and you have strategy and the core is strong and you have quarterly tactics in place to execute, basically what you're saying is now my organization is at a place where we're ready to grow. And really that's where define value and drive growth comes from, is once you're ready to grow, then here's kind of the how to grow, very much like EOS is the how to solidify the base. So it's actually a really neat 1-2 punch. I had a friend that knew Gino, reached out to him, tremendously gracious person, read the book. I could tell by the questions that he was asking me about the book that he kept reading farther and farther into the book, and was grateful for him for not only endorsing it, but at a time where I needed some confidence that what I put together had some value. He gave it to me and saying that it was a great book and he thoroughly enjoyed it. So again, grateful that he took the time to read it and certainly endorse it.
Absolutely. And that just, again, shows the credibility that most people have read Traction and have heard of EOS. So to have him go, oh yeah, this aligns very well. That's another plug for our listeners to be on the lookout for this book, because it could really help their business. And I know your business can help businesses. So you got UVP Solutions. How do you help people in that business?
Yeah. So, kind of over my career, in big businesses and in consulting, I've actually executed the book, right? So there's a process around executing the steps in the book from that discovery phase. And then to your great question before, how do you transition when you all have all the great information from discovery to developing those unique value propositions? And then once you have the unique value propositions, how do you deploy those within the organization with the sales team? And then the last piece is how do you use the outcomes that you're producing, the delight you're delivering to your clients, to magnify that through your social selling and all the other efforts. So people ironically say, I like the processes. Can you help me do that? And that's why UVP Solutions exists. So we have a couple of ways you can execute the model. We're building the process and the system. So a company, if they felt as though that they had an internal project lead who could execute the work, they could do that. We also have the ability to be what we call business led plus coach. If you have somebody internally that you think can run it, but they've never done it before and they would like a little bit of help, we can set them up with a coach. Or if somebody wants to have somebody come in and fully execute the process from a consulting basis, we can also set them up in doing that. So really, it's an advisory to plant those trees with small businesses who need a little bit of help to get the benefits that we're trying to give them.
And we all need help. I do know that. I know every business owner, don't be afraid to ask for help. How can people find you? What's the best places? I know you're on LinkedIn. Do you have other channels, podcast, anything like that you'd like to share?
Best place is LinkedIn, or you can visit us at uvpsolutions.com, and there's a contact us piece there that you can get in touch with us as well. But always happy to help. A big part of what we're doing, Michael, is, I know what you try and do for your audiences, and that is not take all this knowledge with us, but share it with those people who are working really hard, doing all the right things, just aren't getting the results they want. And I've seen you talk about this in the past. It's typically not wholesale changes, right? It's tweaks here or there that'll make a big difference. So it's really about taking people who are running great businesses already and giving them that little bit of fuel, right, pointed in the right direction that really helps magnify what they're doing. And I know you do that for your listeners as well.
Well, we appreciate you sharing all this with us and our listeners. And I know from time to time I've been on a podcast and I'm like, I really wish I would have expanded on this or maybe shared that, or we didn't even talk about this. And is there anything that we didn't cover that you think would be beneficial for me and our listeners?
Yeah, no, I think the one that I always try and come back to is something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is, neither your industry nor your competition define your business. Only you can do that. So I started in the industrial cleaning space, the toilet bowl cleaning industry. And I talked about, we were never defined by the products we sold or the industry we were in. We defined ourselves by being the best solution for our client. And I love leaving that with your listeners to say that you can do this. You can build a differentiated, unique business, regardless of what you do, that leads your industry and your market. And, I hope Define Value, Drive Growth, like EOS, is one of those pieces that small business owners can get their hands around and get their leadership team around the desk and say, what do you guys think, team, about, implementing some of these things to help us? So that would be my message. My message is you can do this. You don't have to be boxed into where you're boxed in. You don't have to follow the industry, the crowd, the product, or the service. You have the ability to lead, and we're here to help business owners, as I know you are, to help them, empower them to lead.
Absolutely. Well, John, I appreciate your time today. I know our listeners do as well. I encourage them to go order your book, check out your website, and you've been a blessing to many and a wealth of information. I wish you continued success.
Right back at you, Michael. Appreciate what you do and how you do it. And thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Small Business Pivots. If you're ready to get unstuck and grow, schedule your free coaching session at michaeldmorrison.com. On social media, you can find and connect with me using the handle Michael D. Morrison OKC. And if today's episode helped you, subscribe and share it with other business owners. Until next week, keep pivoting.